We've already shipped our furniture, my son Victor announced during lunch, with a smile that sent a shiver down my spine. My wife and I agree, Mom. Your beach house is too big for one person. We're moving in tomorrow. Stay with this story until the very last moment. The ending will astonish you. I smiled and looked at my phone. The demolition crew was right on schedule. My daughter-in-law, Karen, nodded with that look of someone who had already made a decision for me. It's what's best for everyone. The kids need the space, and you? Well, at your age, it's dangerous to live alone in a house so far away. Perfect, I murmured, feigning resignation as my fingers glided over the phone. My beach house will be empty for a few months then. Victor frowned, confused by my answer. Empty? What are you talking about? We just told you we're moving in. Yes, I replied with that same sweet smile I had inherited from my mother. But first, I need to do some minor renovations, nothing important. Karen sat up straight in her chair. What kind of renovations? My phone vibrated with a message from the foreman. Mrs. Cynthia, please confirm. We start the full demolition tomorrow at 6 a.m. If you're watching this video, please subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're watching my story of revenge from. I want to know how far it has reached. Oh, just minor details, I said, putting my phone away. Changing some walls, completely renovating the kitchen, redesigning the bathrooms, basically demolishing the entire interior. My smile widened. I already hired the company. They start early tomorrow. The silence that followed was delicious. Victor's fork froze halfway to his mouth, and Karen paled as if she had seen a ghost. Demolition, Victor stammered. Mom, this is a joke, right? I allowed myself a small laugh as I took a sip of my tea. Not at all, my love. You know I never joke about money. I've already invested $30,000 in this project. Karen's face went from pale to red in seconds. But we already shipped our furniture. The truck is on its way. What a shame, Mayena said, shrugging. I hope you have good insurance for your things. Victor stood up from his chair so fast he almost knocked it over. You can't do this. That house is our inheritance, too. Inheritance, I repeated, savoring the word. How interesting that you mentioned that, son, because technically, as long as I'm alive, there's no inheritance to speak of. Karen stood beside her husband, trembling with fury. You're a selfish old woman. You only think about yourself. You're right, I admitted with supernatural calm. At Yewen, I've finally learned to think about myself. It took me too long, don't you think? My phone vibrated again. Another message from the foreman with a photo. Demolition trucks parked in front of my beach house. Victor tried to snatch the phone from me, but I gently pulled it away. Careful, son. At my age, a bump could be dangerous. Cancel that demolition right now, he yelled, completely losing his temper. I can't, I said in a melancholic voice. I already signed the contract. If I cancel now, I lose the $1,000 deposit. Karen approached me with eyes full of angry tears. You knew we were going to move in. That's why you did this. Knew? I asked, playing innocent. How could I have known? You never asked for my opinion. Victor started pacing the dining room, running his hands through his hair. This is a disaster. Karen, call the moving company. Tell them to change the address. To where? She asked in a choked voice. We already gave up our apartment. I slowly got up from the table, feigning the fragility they always used against me. Well, dears, it was a lovely lunch, but I have to go. The foreman wants to show me the final blueprints. You're not going anywhere, Victor roared, blocking my path. You're going to fix this right now. I looked at him with the same expression I used when he was a boy having tantrums. Victor, son, lower your voice. The neighbors will think you're yelling at your elderly mother. That's exactly what I'm doing, he yelled even louder. Perfect. I took out my phone and opened the recording app. Please repeat that for my lawyers. The color drained from his face when he saw the active recording screen. Karen pulled him by the arm, whispering something in his ear. Mom, Victor said, trying to regain his composure. Let's be reasonable. We can reach an agreement. Oh, but we already reached an agreement, I replied, putting the phone away. You decided to move in without consulting me, and I decided to renovate my house without consulting you. I headed for the door, but Karen's voice stopped me. This isn't over. I turned around with the smile I'd been practicing for years. You're right, dear. This is just getting started. I truly wonder if you were in my place, what would you do? Would you choose to be quiet to maintain peace, or would you dare to face everything to reclaim your voice? I want to know your opinion because every story is like a candle that can light the way for someone else. I left my house with my heart beating like a war drum, but maintaining that serene smile I had perfected during years of marriage to a difficult man. Victor and Karen stood in my living room like two salt statues, processing what had just happened. As I walked to my car, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Victor, of course. I silenced it and drove to the beach house. I needed to see with my own eyes the chaos that was about to be unleashed. My name is Cynthia. I'm 61 years old, and up until 6 months ago, I was the invisible widow everyone took for granted. My husband, Robert, passed away 2 years ago, leaving me this house by the sea that he had bought as an investment when Victor was 15. For 40 years of marriage, I learned to be the perfect wife, quiet, obedient, always thinking of others first. But Robert didn't just leave me the house. He also left me $200,000 in life insurance and a savings account he had never mentioned to me. For the first time in my life, I had real financial freedom. Victor, my only son, is 35 and works in sales for a software company. He earns well, but not as well as he'd like to pretend. Karen, his wife of 8 years, is a nurse, but she stopped working when the twins were born 5 years ago. Since then, they've lived paycheck to paycheck in a two-bedroom apartment, always complaining they needed more space. What they didn't know was that for the past 6 months, I'd been intercepting their conversations, not out of malice, but out of survival. It all started when Victor left his phone on my table during a family dinner. A WhatsApp notification lit up the screen. I already talked to Mom about moving to the beach. She's so lonely she'll definitely say yes. It was a message from Karen to her sister, Danielle. My blood ran cold. That night, pretending to clean the kitchen, I read more messages. Says, Karen had been planning this for months. The old lady is getting senile, she wrote. She won't notice if we start moving our things in little by little. Victor replied, My dad always said that house would be ours someday. Why wait for him to die? That's when I knew I had to act, and the next day, I hired the best private detective in the city. For $500 a week, I got screenshots of all their family conversations. Karen had created a group called Operation Beach House with her sisters, Danielle and Diane. The plans were detailed and cruel. First, they would move in temporarily while they found something better. Then they would convince a doctor that I could no longer live alone. Finally, they would move me to a nursing home for my own good and keep the property. It's a $400,000 house wasted on an old lady who watches TV all day, Karen wrote. We'd give it the use it deserves. When I arrived at the beach house, the demolition trucks were already in position. The foreman, a burly man named George, greeted me with his yellow helmet in his hand. Mrs. Cynthia, everything is ready. Are you sure you want us to start so early tomorrow? Absolutely, and I replied, looking at the beautiful two-story house that Robert and I had cared for decades. At 6 sharp, as we agreed. It's just, George continued, scratching his beard, that another truck seems to be scheduled for the same time. Wouldn't it be better to coordinate? I smiled. Don't worry, the moving trucks won't be a problem. George nodded, though he looked confused. All right. Then we'll start with the kitchen and bathrooms as you requested. The full demolition will take about 6 weeks. Perfect, I said, handing him an envelope with an extra $1,000 for the inconvenience. His eyes lit up. With this bonus, my guys will be here before sunrise. While George organized his team, I walked through the house one last time before the transformation. Every corner held memories of Robert, but also of the family that never valued what they had. My phone vibrated. It was a message from my sister, Rose. Victor told me about the demolition. You've gone crazy. That house is the family's heritage. I replied, Family heritage is built with respect, not invasions. She immediately called me. Cynthia, don't be selfish. Victor is your son. He has a right to that house. Tell me whether you have parents, grandparents, or older family members who deserve more respect than they currently receive from their families. Alternatively, tell me if you yourself are going through a situation in which you're not appreciated as much as you truly deserve. He has a right to respect and an education, I replied, not to my properties. but he needs the space for the kids. Rose, I interrupted her. Did you know that Victor and Karen were planning to have me declared mentally incompetent to take my house? Total silence on the other end of the line. I have all the conversations, I continued. They even discussed which nursing home would be cheaper to lock me up in. That can't be true, my sister murmured. I can send you the screenshots if you want. Another long silence. Finally, Rose sighed. Cynthia, even if it's true, he's still your son, and I'm still his mother, not his slave. I hung up and watched the sunset from the terrace that would soon be demolished. For the first time in years, I felt completely in control of my destiny. My phone rang again. This time it was Karen crying. Cynthia, please, can we talk like adults? The kids have nowhere to sleep tomorrow. You should have thought about that before you sent your furniture without asking me, I replied calmly, but you said it was okay. When did I say that, Karen? Well, not exactly, but exactly, you assumed. And you know what they say about assuming. Between sobs, Karen murmured, Victor says you've always been a manipulative witch. How curious, I said, smiling toward the horizon. I was thinking the exact same thing about you two. The dawn of the next day was like a symphony of perfectly orchestrated chaos. At 5:30 a.m., I was already awake with my coffee, sitting in a folding chair in front of the beach house waiting for the show. At 5:45, the first moving truck arrived. A burly man got out of the cab and began checking a tablet. Behind him came another truck, this one loaded to the brim with furniture I recognized immediately. Karen's cream sofa, the dining table they had bought last year, the kids' beds. At 5:58, George arrived with his demolition crew. 6 men with helmets, tools, and an energy that promised total destruction. Good morning, Mrs. Cynthia, George greeted me. Ready to start? More than ready, I replied, enjoying every second. The moving truck driver approached us, clearly confused. Excuse me, is this the right address? I have a move scheduled, but I see construction equipment. That's right, I said with my sweetest smile. There's a small misunderstanding. The people who hired your services do not have authorization to move in here. The man frowned. Ma'am, I just follow orders. Mr. Victor paid in advance and gave me this address. Mr. Victor does not own this property, and I explained patiently. I am the owner, and I do not authorize any move-in. George chuckled under his breath. This is going to be good, he murmured to one of his colleagues. At that moment, Victor appeared, running down the street as if he were being chased by the devil. Karen was coming behind him, carrying one of the twins while the other ran beside her. Mom! Victor shouted before he reached me. Stop this right now. Good morning, son, I replied without moving from my chair. I see you're an early bird. Don't be funny, he roared, completely out of his mind. Cancel this demolition right now. The moving driver was watching the scene as if it were a reality show. Can someone explain to me what's going on here? Very simple, I said, slowly getting up. My son decided to move into my house without asking permission. I decided to renovate it without asking for his permission. Karen approached with tears streaming down her cheeks. Cynthia, please be reasonable. We have children. The children are not my responsibility, Karen. They're yours. You're a heartless grandmother, she yelled at me. I am a grandmother with boundaries, I corrected. George cleared his throat. Ma'am, it's 6 o'clock. We're starting. Please, I replied, making an elegant gesture toward the house. Victor stood between George and the front door. You're not touching this house. Son, I said in a dangerously calm voice, get out of the way or I'll have to call the police. Call them, he challenged me. Let's see if they'll arrest a son for protecting family heritage. I took out my phone and dialed 911. Good morning. I need to report a person who is preventing authorized construction work on my private property. Victor's face changed from red with anger to white with panic. Mom, no. Yes, my son, I continued, speaking to the operator. He is threatening the workers and disturbing the peace. Karen snatched the phone from my hands. Stop, you're crazy. Mistake number 1, I said, touching my property without permission. George, I said in an icy voice, you saw what this woman just did. Yes, ma'am, she took the phone from your hands. That constitutes theft. George nodded slowly. In my opinion, yes. Karen handed me the phone back as if it were burning her. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Too late for apologies, I said, calling the police again. In 10 minutes, a patrol car arrived. 2 officers, one young and one older, got out of the car, assessing the situation. The older officer, a man in his 50s named Rick, according to his badge, addressed me. You reported the disturbance, ma'am? That's right. I'm Cynthia, the owner of this house. I hired these workers for a renovation, but these people are preventing them from doing their job. Rick looked at Victor. Is that true, sir? She's my mother, Victor shouted. She's demolishing the family house out of spite. Do you own the property? The officer asked. Well, no, but then you have no right to prevent the work, Rick concluded. Karen approached the younger officer. Officer, please understand. We already shipped our furniture here. We have small children and nowhere to go. Ma'am, the young officer replied. I'm sorry for your situation, but that doesn't give you the right to occupy private property without authorization. The moving driver, who had been watching everything like a soap opera, finally intervened. Excuse me, but I need an answer. Do I unload the furniture or not? No, I said firmly. You are not authorized to unload anything on my property. But we already paid, Karen screamed. That's your problem, not mine, I replied, shrugging. Victor turned to the officers. You can't allow this. This is elder abuse in reverse. Officer Rick almost smiled. Sir, your mother looks perfectly capable of making her own decisions. But she's leaving us on the street. No, the officer corrected him. You put yourselves on the street by assuming you could move in here without permission. George approached me. Mrs. Cynthia, do we proceed with the demolition? Go ahead, I replied. No! Karen screamed so loudly that the children started crying. Please, at least let us take our things out of the truck and find a place to put them. I looked at her for a long moment. For the first time since this nightmare began, I saw genuine desperation in her eyes, not manipulation. You have 1 hour, I said finally. 1 hour for the truck to leave and for you to find a place to store your things. After that, we start the demolition. The driver nodded, relieved. 1 hour is enough for me. I know a storage facility 10 minutes from here. Victor looked at me with a mix of gratitude and resentment. Thank you, Mom. Don't thank me, I replied coldly. This doesn't change anything. It just gives me time to enjoy the show better. The officers left after warning Victor that any further interference would result in his arrest. George and his team waited patiently while the move-in truck left, loaded with the shattered dreams of my son and his wife. At 7:30 a.m., the first jackhammer roared against the kitchen wall. The sound was music to my ears. Victor and Karen stood in the street with the children crying and their plans in pieces. Karen had the phone glued to her ear, I suppose calling relatives to ask for temporary refuge. Are you happy now? Victor yelled at me over the noise of the demolition. I'm at peace, I yelled back. For the first time in years, I am completely at peace. 2 days after the demolition, when I thought I would get a break, the real war began. My sister Rose came to my door at 7 a.m., accompanied by my brother Carl and, to my surprise, my own parents. Cynthia Marie, my mother said, using my full name, as she did when I was a child, we need to talk. I let them into my living room, mentally preparing myself for what I knew was coming. My 83-year-old father settled into his chair with that serious expression he had perfected during decades of family patriarchy. My daughter, he began in a shaky but firm voice. What is this that Victor is telling us, that you destroyed the beach house? I didn't destroy it, Dad. I'm renovating it. Rose leaned forward, her eyes bright with indignation. On the day Victor needed it most, do you know where your grandchildren are sleeping? At Karen's parents' house, I replied calmly. I know because Victor has left me 42 voice messages explaining it. Carl, my younger brother, cleared his throat. Cynthia, we understand you're hurt, but this is getting out of control. Hurt by what? I asked, genuinely curious. Because Robert died and you feel lonely, my mother explained in a soft voice. It's natural that you want attention, but this isn't the way. I remained silent for a moment, processing that my own mother believed this was all a widowhood tantrum. Mom, yet I said finally, did you know that Victor and Karen were planning to have me committed to a nursing home? That's ridiculous, Rose intervened. Victor would never do something like that. I took out my phone and opened the folder where I kept all the screenshots. Want to see them? The silence that followed was deafening. I passed the phone around the room, showing conversation after conversation, the detailed plans, the mockery of my age, the discussions about what to do with my few years they thought I had left. My father was the first to speak, his voice broken. This is true. Every word, I confirmed. My mother put her hand to her chest. But they're your grandchildren, Cynthia. Think about the kids. Mom, I said, getting up from my seat. For 40 years, I thought about everyone else first. About Robert, about Victor, about this family, about the neighbors, about what they would say. I never thought about myself. That's what a family woman should be, my father murmured. No, Dad. That's how a woman is destroyed. Carl stood up, clearly uncomfortable. Look, Cynthia, we all make mistakes. Victor is young. He got carried away by Karen, but he's still your son. And I'm still a person with rights, I replied. Family rights are not above your own, Rose declared, nor are family rights above my dignity. My phone rang at that moment. It was George, the foreman. Mrs. Cynthia, we have a problem. There's a group of people trying to get onto the property. They say they're your family. I looked out the window and saw 3 cars parked in front of my house. I recognized Victor's and Karen's cars, but there was one more I didn't recognize. Dad, I said, hanging up the phone, did you tell the whole family to come? My father avoided my gaze. We thought you needed an intervention. An intervention? I repeated slowly, as if I were an alcoholic. Cynthia, my mother got up and tried to take my hands. You're acting irrationally. This isn't like you. You're right, Mom. The Cynthia you knew would never have done this. That Cynthia is dead. I left my house and walked toward the beach house, followed by my impromptu family committee. When I arrived, I found a complete circus. Victor, Karen, the twins, Danielle, and Diane, Karen's sisters. And to my absolute surprise, John, my ex-brother-in-law, Robert's brother. George saw me coming and ran over. Ma'am, these people insist they have the right to enter. The gentleman says he's going to call his lawyers. Lawyers? I asked, looking directly at Victor. With what money, son? Karen stepped forward with the children clinging to her arms. Cynthia, please, look at what you're doing to your grandchildren. The twins, Santiago and Sebastian, both 5, looked at me with confused, scared eyes. For a moment, I felt a pang of guilt, but then I remembered the messages where Karen suggested the children would be the best emotional weapon against the old woman. Hello, my loves, I said to the children in a soft voice. How are you? Grandma, Santiago said in a small voice. Why is your house broken? It's not broken, my love. I'm fixing it so it will be more beautiful. Can we live with you when it's fixed? Sebastian asked. Before I could answer, Victor stepped in between us. The kids don't have to suffer for your whims, Mom. My whims, I repeated. That's what you call defending my property. John, my ex-brother-in-law, approached with an expression meant to be conciliatory. Cynthia, Robert wouldn't have wanted this. He always said that family was the most important thing. Robert also said that men don't cry, I replied, and that didn't mean it was true. Don't speak ill of my brother, John warned me. I'm not speaking ill of him. I'm saying that being dead doesn't make him a saint. Danielle, Karen's older sister, decided to intervene. Mrs. Cynthia, we understand you're upset, but Karen and Victor didn't have bad intentions. They didn't have bad intentions when they planned to have me declared mentally incompetent. That was taken out of context, Danielle stammered. In what context is it acceptable to plan to commit someone to a nursing home to steal their house? Diane, Karen's younger sister, more direct than her sister, came up to me. Look, ma'am, we all know you're old. It's normal that you can't make rational decisions. Mistake number 2, I said, underestimating my mental capacity. Diane, I said with a dangerous smile, I'm 61, not 91. My mind is perfectly clear. But you're acting like a crazy person, she insisted. George, who had been listening to everything, laughed openly. Ma'am, with all due respect to your family, you are the sanest person I've ever met. I've been in construction for 30 years and have never seen anyone plan a renovation with such precision. Thank you, George, I said. How is the work going? Perfectly. We've already finished demolishing the kitchen and have started on the bathrooms. By Friday, we'll have the first floor completely empty. Victor paled. Mom, please, we can still fix this. Cancel the renovation. Let us move in temporarily. Temporarily? I interrupted him. Like the temporary job that lasted 6 months and became permanent? Like the temporary $5,000 loan you never paid back? Like the temporary stay at my house after your divorce that lasted a year? That was different, he murmured it. No, son, that was the pattern. My mother approached me with tears in her eyes. Cynthia, please, for the love you have for me, stop this madness. Mom, I said, taking her wrinkled hands, for the love you have for me, support my decision for once in your life. I can't support something that is going to destroy this family. This family destroyed itself when they decided to treat me like a nuisance. Carl tried one last time. Cynthia, what if we make an agreement? Victor and Karen will pay you rent. With what money? I asked. With the same money they don't have to pay for their own apartment? The silence was overwhelming. No one had an answer because everyone knew I was right. Good, I said finally. I've heard everyone. This is my final answer. You are not going to live in my house. Not now, not temporarily, not ever. Karen burst into dramatic sobs. You're a monster. Your grandchildren are going to remember that their grandmother left them homeless. My grandchildren are going to remember that their grandmother didn't let herself be trampled on, I replied. And hopefully, that will teach them to respect women when they grow up. George cleared his throat. Mrs. Cynthia, we need to get back to work. These people are going to stay here. No, I said, looking at my assembled family. They're leaving now. We're not done, Victor yelled. Yes, we are, I said with absolute finality. Until you learn to respect me as a person, not as your property, we have nothing more to talk about. A week after the family drama, when I thought I would finally have some peace to supervise the renovation, I discovered that Victor and Karen had escalated their war to a level I never imagined. It all started when George called me at 5 a.m., something completely unusual for him. Mrs. Cynthia, his voice sounded tense. We have a serious problem. I arrived at the site early and found that someone vandalized the equipment during the night. I got dressed quickly and drove to the beach house with my heart pounding. When I arrived, the scene left me speechless. The tires on 2 trucks were slashed. Someone had spray-painted Cruel Grandma on the outside wall in red, and fresh concrete had been poured into the engines of 2 excavators. The damages amount to about $8,000, George informed me as we walked through the mess, not counting the delay of at least a week while we get replacement equipment. Do you have any idea who could have done this? I asked, though I already suspected the answer. George scratched his head. Well, Ramon, my assistant, says he saw a blue car hanging around last night. He couldn't see the license plates, but... A blue car? I repeated. Victor had a dark blue Honda. Ma'am, I don't want to get involved in family problems, but this isn't a kid's prank. This is criminal sabotage. I immediately called the police. This time, a detective came, a serious man named Rick, who took pictures of everything and collected paint samples. Mrs. Hernandez, he said, using my married name, do you have suspicions about who could have done this? I have more than suspicions, I replied, showing him the conversations I had intercepted. Here is proof that my son and his wife consider me their enemy. The detective reviewed the screenshots with an increasingly serious expression. This constitutes evidence of a conspiracy. Do you want to press charges? It was the question I'd been avoiding for days. Was I really willing to send my own son to jail? Give me 24 hours to decide, I told him. That afternoon, while I was cleaning the paint from the wall, an unexpected visitor arrived. It was Danielle, Karen's sister, but she came alone and with a very different expression than at the previous meeting. Mrs. Cynthia, she began in a trembling voice, I need to talk to you. If you are here to ask me to forgive your sister, you can save yourself the trip, I said without stopping my cleaning. No, she replied, surprising me. I came to apologize and to tell you something you need to know. I stopped cleaning and looked at her directly. I'm listening. Karen is completely out of control. Last night she called me crying, saying you'd ruined her life, and she had to do something drastic like vandalizing my property. Danielle nodded miserably. Worse, she's planning to sue you for child neglect. She's already talked to a lawyer who told her she could argue emotional distress. I slowly sat down in a plastic chair, processing this new information. Emotional neglect? And the lawyer thinks that will work? The lawyer is Karen's cousin. More than helping her legally, he's filling her with false hope for money. Why are you telling me this, Danielle? The woman completely broke down. Because I have children too, and if my mother-in-law did what Karen is doing, I would hate her forever. What my sister is doing is wrong. Karen knows you're here? Oh God, she would kill me, but someone has to stop this madness before it destroys the whole family. At that moment, George arrived with even more disturbing news. Mrs. Cynthia, I just got a call from the supply depot. Someone broke in last night and stole about $3,000 worth of tools. Specific tools? I asked. Yes, curiously, they only took the most expensive ones, as if they knew exactly what to look for. Danielle paled. Victor worked in construction during his college summers. He knows the value of tools perfectly. The evidence was accumulating overwhelmingly. My own son had become a criminal. Danielle, I said firmly, I need you to do me a favor. Anything. I want you to tell Karen to come talk to me tomorrow at 2 p.m. Alone. What for? To give her one last chance to end this civilly. Danielle left, promising to deliver the message. George continued working despite the sabotage, hiring night security to prevent more incidents. That night, alone in my house, I did something I hadn't done since Robert's death. I cried. I cried for the son I had raised, who had become someone I didn't recognize. I cried for the grandchildren who were being used as emotional weapons. I cried for the family that had broken, not because of me, but because of years of normalized abuse. But after crying, I made a decision. I was not going to back down. The next day, at exactly 2 p.m., Karen arrived at my door. She came alone as I had requested, but with an attitude that boded no good. Cynthia, she began before sitting down, Danielle told me you wanted to talk. That's right. Please, have a seat. She settled on the edge of the chair as if she were ready to run at any moment. Karen, I said, looking her directly into the eyes, we are going to resolve this once and for all. Perfect, she replied in a defiant voice, because I have things to tell you too. I'm listening. You are going to cancel that ridiculous renovation. You're going to let us move into the house, and you're going to pay for the damages you caused to our furniture in storage. I remained silent for a long moment, amazed by her audacity. Are you finished? I asked finally. No, you are also going to apologize to the children for the trauma you caused them. Karen, I said in a dangerously calm voice, you vandalized my property last night. I don't know what you're talking about. Victor stole tools from the construction supply depot. That's ridiculous. And you are planning to sue me for emotional neglect. Her face turned red. How do you know? Because unlike you, I have a brain. She jumped out of the chair as if propelled by a spring. I'm not going to stay here and listen to your insults. Perfect, I said, also getting up. Because this conversation is over. This isn't going to end like this, she yelled, heading for the door. You're right, I yelled back. It's not going to end like this. It's going to get much worse. After she left, I called Detective Rick. Good afternoon, Detective. This is Cynthia Hernandez. I want to press charges for vandalism and theft against my son and my daughter-in-law. Are you sure, ma'am? Once we file the charges, there's no turning back. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Very well. I need you to come to the station this afternoon to sign the complaint. I hung up the phone and sat on my terrace, watching the seagulls fly over the sea. For the first time since this war began, I felt completely at peace with my decisions. The war had escalated, but I had the most powerful weapons of all, the truth, and the law on my side. 3 days after filing the criminal charges, I received a call that would change the course of this entire war. It was 8 a.m., and I was having a quiet breakfast when the phone rang. Mrs. Cynthia, an unknown male voice asked, this is Marcus Rivera, your son Victor's lawyer. Good morning, counselor, I replied with forced politeness. Ma'am, my client would like to schedule a meeting with you to reach an out-of-court settlement. A settlement, I repeated with genuine surprise. After vandalizing my property and stealing tools, my client denies those accusations but is willing to discuss a resolution that benefits both parties. Does this afternoon at 4 work for you? Perfectly, but I want to be clear. I'm coming with my own lawyer. I hung up and immediately called Rose, not to ask for her support, but to inform her of what was happening. Cynthia, she said in a tired voice, please tell me you're going to fix this. The whole family is divided because of you. Because of me? I repeated slowly. Not because of Victor who vandalized my property? He says it wasn't him. Of course he says that. Criminals always deny their crimes. Don't call your own son a criminal. Rose, I said with infinite patience. If someone who wasn't my son had done what he did, what would you call them? Silence on the other end of the line. Exactly, I continued. The problem isn't what he did. The problem is that you can't accept that he did it. That afternoon, I showed up at the law firm, accompanied by my attorney, a fierce woman named Patricia Morales, who had specialized in elder law after seeing how her own mother had been abused. Mrs. Cynthia, Patricia had told me when I hired her, I've seen cases like yours hundreds of times, children who think their elderly mothers are family property. The office was elegant with ocean views that cost $1,000 an hour. Marcus Rivera turned out to be a man in his 40s, well-dressed, with that professional smile he had perfected for handling the family conflicts. Victor and Karen were sitting on the other side of the table, both visibly nervous. Karen avoided my gaze, but Victor watched me with a mix of resentment and something that might have been shame. "All right," Rivera began. "We're here to see if we can resolve this family misunderstanding without going to court." "There is no misunderstanding," I said firmly. "There is documented vandalism and proven theft. My client has a proposal," Rivera continued, ignoring my comment. "He is willing to pay for the damages caused to your property in exchange for you dropping the charges and allowing them to move into the beach house temporarily." Patricia leaned forward. "Temporarily? For how long?" "6 months," Rivera replied. "A year," Karen corrected quickly. 2 years, Victor added. Patricia and I looked at each other. "Do you see what just happened?" Patricia asked Rivera. "In 30 seconds, their temporary turned into 2 years. Those are details we can negotiate," Rivera said with growing nervousness. "No," and I declared, standing up. "There is no negotiation. You're not going to live in my house, ever." "Ma," Victor shouted, also standing up. "Be reasonable. We're family. Family doesn't vandalize family property," I replied. Karen finally spoke, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Cynthia, please, think about the children. Santiago asks every night when he can live in the beach house like we promised him." "You promised him something that wasn't yours to promise?" I said, unmoved by the tears. "That is your mistake, not mine." Rivera tried to regain control of the meeting. "Mrs. Cynthia, my client is willing to increase the offer. He will pay $10,000 for the damages, and also—" "Counselor," Patricia interrupted him, "my client is not here to negotiate the sale of her dignity." "Dignity?" Karen scoffed. "This is pure revenge." "Karen," I said, turning to her, "for 8 years, you've lived assuming that my house would be yours one day. For 8 years, you've made plans with my property without consulting me. For 8 years, you've talked about me as if I were a nuisance to be managed." "That is not—" "I have all the conversations," I continued relentlessly. "Every plan, every mockery, every strategy to get rid of me." Rivera looked more and more uncomfortable. "Ma'am, I understand you're upset, but I'm not upset," I corrected him. "I'm fed up." Victor approached my side of the table. "Mom, I'm sorry you felt excluded from our plans, but we never had bad intentions." "Victor, hey," I said, looking at him with the same expression I used when I scolded him as a child. "Do you really think I'm stupid enough to believe that? You're not stupid, so don't talk to me as if I were." Patricia took the moment to take control. "Counselor Rivera, my client has a counterproposal." Rivera sat up, hopeful. "Let's hear it." "Your client will pay $30,000 in damages. He will sign a legal document promising never to approach my client's property again, and will publicly apologize on social media for the vandalism." "That's ridiculous," Karen shouted. "In exchange," Patricia continued, unmoved, "and that my client will consider dropping the criminal charges." "Consider?" Rivera asked. "The civil charges remain regardless of the agreement." Victor turned pale. "Civil charges for damages and emotional distress," Patricia explained. "My client lost a week of construction work, had additional security expenses, and suffered medically documented emotional distress." "How much money are we talking about?" Rivera asked. $30,000, Patricia replied without blinking. The silence that followed was absolute. Victor and Karen looked at each other with growing horror. "No, we don't have that kind of money," Karen murmured. "Then I guess we'll see you in court," Patricia said, starting to gather her papers. "Wait!" Victor shouted. "Can't we reach a smaller agreement?" "Victor," I said in a tired voice, "do you really think this is about money?" "It's not about money, it's about respect. It's about boundaries. It's about recognizing that I am a person, not your property. I've always respected you." I laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. "Son, planning to commit me to a nursing home is not respect. I never planned that." I took out my phone and began to read aloud. Message from Victor to Karen. Date, March 15th. If Mom gets difficult about the house, we can find a cheap nursing home. At her age, any medical excuse will do. Rivera closed his eyes. Karen sank into her chair. Victor was speechless. Want me to read more? I asked. I have conversations about selling my jewelry, using my pension, and even discussions about what to do if I live too long. Cynthia, Karen began in a broken voice. No, I cut her off. I no longer want to hear excuses, justifications, or pleas. I got up and walked to the door. Patricia, send them the written agreement. They have 48 hours to respond. Mom, Victor shouted from behind me, it can't end like this. I stopped at the door and turned one last time. Son, this ended a long time ago. You just hadn't realized it. I left the office with the strange feeling of having closed a chapter of my life that I never thought I would have the courage to close. Patricia caught up with me in the parking lot. Mrs. Cynthia, are you sure you want to go through with this? Patricia, I said as I opened my car door, I have never been more sure of anything in my entire life. The criminal charges will proceed regardless of the civil agreement. I know. Your son could go to jail. I know that too. And are you at peace with that possibility? I looked at the blue evening sky and took a deep breath. Patricia, for 61 years I have lived in peace with decisions that others made for me. It's time to live in peace with the decisions I make myself. The 48 hours passed without a response from Victor and Karen. On Friday morning, Patricia called me to confirm what I already knew. They had rejected the agreement. Time's up, she informed me. We proceed with everything, criminal charges and a civil lawsuit. Perfect, I replied as I supervised George and his team installing the new marble floors in what would soon be my renovated kitchen. But the peace was short-lived. That same Friday afternoon, while I was checking the new electrical installations, I received a call that sent a chill down my spine. Mrs. Cynthia, an unknown female voice asked, this is Dr. Elena Vasquez from St. Raphael's Hospital. My heart stopped. What happened? I have your grandson Santiago here. He had a minor accident, nothing serious, but we need family authorization for certain procedures. Where are his parents? That's the problem. Apparently, the parents are in a legal hearing and are not answering their phones. The boy gave us your number. That is an emergency contact. I dropped the tools I had in my hands. I'm on my way there immediately. I drove to the hospital like a maniac, 1,000 terrible thoughts racing through my mind. As angry as I was with Victor and Karen, Santiago was innocent in all of this. I arrived at the hospital and ran to the emergency room. I found my grandson sitting on a gurney with a cast on his right arm and dried tears on his cheeks. When he saw me, his little face lit up. Grandma, he yelled, extending his good arm toward me. My love, I said, hugging him carefully so as not to hurt his injured arm. How do you feel? It hurts a little, he admitted, but the doctor said I'm going to be okay. Vasquez approached us. She was a young woman in her 30s with that professional but kind expression that characterizes good pediatricians. You're the grandmother? She asked me. Yes, Cynthia Hernandez. What exactly happened? Santiago fell off the swings at school. He has a simple fracture in his radius, nothing complicated, but he needs to wear a cast for 6 weeks. The parents still haven't shown up. The doctor checked her watch. We've been calling them for 3 hours. No one answers. At that moment, Sebastian, Santiago's twin brother, appeared, running down the hallway, followed by a visibly stressed teacher. Santiago, Sebastian shouted when he saw his brother. Does it hurt a lot? Not much, Santiago replied, trying to be brave. Look, I have a cast, just like superheroes when they get hurt. The teacher, an older woman named Carmen, approached me, panting, Ma'am, I'm so sorry, but Sebastian insisted on coming to the hospital. The parents are busy, I said with a bitterness I tried to hide in front of the children. The doctor took me aside while the twins talked to each other. Mrs. Cynthia, I need to ask you some uncomfortable questions. Do the parents of these children have a problem? Drugs, alcohol, neglect? Why are you asking that? Because in 3 hours of constant calls, neither has answered. And Santiago told me that they've been living from house to house for the past few weeks. I felt as if I had been punched in the stomach, from house to house. His exact words were, Mommy and Daddy are fighting with Grandma, so sometimes we sleep at Aunt Danielle's house, sometimes at Aunt Diane's, and sometimes at Mommy's grandparents' house. The reality hit me like a tsunami. In my war against Victor and Karen, I had lost sight of the fact that the real victims were two 5-year-old children who didn't understand why their world had become unstable. "Doctor," I said in a broken voice, "can I take the children with me? You're not legally authorized to care for them. I need written authorization from the parents or a court order." At that moment, as if sent by fate, Victor appeared, running down the hallway. He was disheveled, with a wrinkled shirt and an expression of absolute panic. "Santiago!" he shouted when he saw his son. "Are you okay, champ?" "Daddy!" The two children ran toward him. "Grandma came to take care of me." Victor looked at me over the heads of his children. For the first time in months, there was no anger in his eyes, only gratitude. "Thank you," he murmured. "Thank you for coming. They're my grandchildren," I replied simply. The doctor approached Victor. "You are the father. I need you to sign some documents." While Victor filled out papers, I stayed with the children. Santiago took my good hand with his good arm. "Grandma," he said in a low voice, "are you still mad at Mommy and Daddy?" The question broke my heart. "My love, sometimes adults have problems, but that doesn't mean I stop loving you. Can we go to your house?" Sebastian asked. "I miss your yard and your cookies." Before I could answer, Victor returned with the signed papers. The doctor gave us care instructions for Santiago and asked us to return in a week to check the cast. We left the hospital in an uncomfortable silence. The children walked between Victor and me, Ed and Edson, each holding a different hand, unaware of the tension in the air. "Where is Karen?" I finally asked. "At her parents' house," Victor replied, avoiding my gaze. "She's processing all of this." "And where are the kids going to sleep tonight?" "I don't know," he admitted in a broken voice. "We've been rotating between relatives' houses. No one can take us in permanently." We stopped next to my car. The children let go of our hands and ran to look at an ambulance passing by with sirens on. "Victor," I said, lowering my voice, "this has to stop." "I know," he replied without looking up from the ground. "The children are suffering." "I know. They're living in chaos because you decided to declare war on me." "I know, Mom, but I don't know how to stop it anymore." For the first time in months, I saw the little boy I had raised, not the selfish man he had become. "You really don't know?" I asked. "What do you want me to do, grovel?" "I want you to accept that you were wrong. And then what?" "Then we find a real solution, one that doesn't involve invading my house or stealing my tools." The children came running back to us. Santiago stumbled slightly from the weight of the cast, but Sebastian immediately helped him. "Can we go now?" Sebastian asked. "I'm hungry." I looked at my grandchildren, then at my son, and made a decision that I knew could cost me dearly. "Victor," I said finally, "the children are coming with me tonight." "What?" "You're coming to my house tonight. You can sleep on the sofa. Tomorrow you and I will talk, without lawyers, without Karen, without drama. Just a mother and son conversation." "Mom, the children need you to be stable, and you need to sleep in a bed, not in a car." "Aren't you afraid I'll steal something else?" he asked bitterly. "Victor," I said firmly, "I've never been afraid of you. I've been afraid of what you had become, but you are still my son." He arrived half an hour later, carrying a duffel bag and looking like he hadn't slept in days. The children were already fast asleep, so he spoke in whispers while I made him something to eat. He began as I heated up the soup. "I'm sorry for everything." "Everything?" "What exactly are you sorry for?" I asked. I needed specifics, not general apologies. "I'm sorry for planning to move in without your permission. I'm sorry for talking about you as if you were a nuisance. I'm sorry for the vandalism. Were you the one who vandalized my property?" He lowered his head. "Yes, and the tools too." "Why, Victor, why did you go to that extreme?" He was silent for a long moment, stirring the soup in the bowl without eating it. "Because Karen convinced me that you hated us. She told me you were being cruel on purpose, that you wanted to see us suffer. And you believed her. I was desperate, Maya. No permanent job, no house with 2 small children. When Karen suggested that you had the solution to all our problems, I wanted to believe her. But I was never the problem, Victor. The problem was that you wanted an easy solution to problems you had to solve yourselves." "I know that now," he murmured. "But when you're desperate, it's easy to blame others." I served him a second helping of soup. "Victor, did you really plan to have me committed?" His face turned red with shame. "That was Karen's idea. She said she knew of similar cases where you had agreed. Not at first, but when you kept refusing to let us use the house, I started to think that maybe what? That maybe you were being unreasonable because of your age. The honesty in his answer hurt more than any lie. Victor, I'm 61, not 91. My mind is perfectly clear. I know, Mom, I always knew, but it was easier to think that you were the problem and not us. We were silent while he finished eating. Outside, the ocean waves created their constant nighttime rhythm. What's going to happen now? He asked finally. I don't know, I admitted. The criminal charges are still pending, the civil lawsuit too. There's no way to… To what? To pretend that nothing happened. To act as if you hadn't disrespected me for months. No, but Victor, I interrupted him, forgiveness is not the same as consequences. I can forgive you and still demand that you pay for what you did. Do you forgive me? He asked with the voice of a little boy. I am forgiving you, I corrected. It's a process, not an event. He got up from the table and began to wash his bowl. The children can stay with you while I figure out the job and housing situation. How long do you need? A month, maybe two. I've been sending out job applications, but without a permanent address, it's complicated. The children can stay, I decided, but with conditions, whatever they are. First condition, you'll go to individual and family therapy. Therapy, Victor, what happened here isn't normal. You need to understand why you got to the point of vandalizing your own mother's property. Okay, second condition, you'll pay child support while they're with me, $200 a week. 200? Mom, I don't… How much was your rent in your apartment? $1,000 a month. But the children eat, use electricity and water, and need new clothes. $200 a week is cheap for full-time care. He nodded slowly. You're right. Third condition, you will respect my decisions about their education, discipline, and care. I am the temporary guardian, not the babysitter. Understood? And fourth condition, no drama with Karen. If she wants to see the children, she can call me directly. I don't want intermediaries or manipulations. But she's their mother. She is their mother who decided to go to Phoenix instead of staying to fight for her children. When she's ready to be a full-time mother, we can talk. Victor finished washing the bowl and turned to me. Why are you doing this, Mom? After everything that happened, why are you helping me? Because those children sleeping in my guest room had nothing to do with your mistakes. And because despite everything, you're still my son. I love you, Mom, he said with tears in his eyes. I love you too, son. But love isn't enough. We also need respect, boundaries, and consequences. That night, as I listened to Victor moving on the sofa and the children breathing softly in their room, I realized that the war had ended in a way I never would have imagined. There were no winners or losers, just a broken family trying to rebuild itself with new rules. 6 months later, as I watched Santiago and Sebastian play in the newly renovated yard of my beach house, I realized that life has strange ways of giving us exactly what we need, even if it's not what we had planned. The house looked spectacular. George and his team had transformed the old structure into something that looked like it came out of an architecture magazine. White marble floors, a modern kitchen with a central island, huge windows that let in all the sunlight, and most importantly, a security system that gave me absolute peace of mind. But the most beautiful renovations weren't the physical ones, they were the emotional ones. Victor had fulfilled all my conditions religiously. He found a job as a sales manager at a tech company, paid the $200 weekly payments on time, and had been in individual therapy for 3 months. He had rented a small apartment 10 minutes from my house, where the children spent their weekends. The therapy had worked better than any of us had expected. Dr. Moreno, his psychologist, had called me to explain that Victor had deep-seated problems with self-esteem and financial dependence that made him vulnerable to manipulation. Your son is afraid of failure, the doctor had explained to me. Karen took advantage of those fears to convince him that you were the cause of his financial problems. Karen, for her part, had returned from Phoenix after 2 months, but things didn't go as she expected. The children, accustomed to the stability of my house, didn't want to go live with her in the small apartment she had rented. Why can't we stay with Grandma? Santiago had asked her during one of her visits. Here we have our room, our toys, and Grandma makes the best cookies. Karen's response had been revealing. Instead of understanding that the children needed stability, she had tried to bribe them with promises of new toys and trips to amusement parks. The real test came on a Wednesday afternoon when Karen showed up at my door unannounced after not seeing the children for 3 weeks. "Cynthia," she said with that syrupy voice that no longer fooled me, "we need to talk about the children." "Go ahead," I replied without inviting her in. "It's not natural for children to prefer their grandmother over their mother. It's not natural for them to prefer stability over chaos. I don't cause chaos. Karen, in the last 6 months, how many times have you canceled visits with the children?" "That was because I was looking for a job." "And times," I interrupted her. 10 times you promised to pick them up and you didn't show up. You had valid reasons. The children don't understand valid reasons. They only understand promises kept or broken." She was silent for a moment, then changed tactics. "Victor told me you're thinking of applying for legal custody." "Victor talks too much," I murmured. "Is it true, Cynthia? If you were a stable, present mother, it would never occur to me to apply for custody. The children need their mother. I am a stable mother. Where do you currently live? I'm between apartments. Where do you work? I'm looking for a job. When was the last time you took Santiago to the doctor to check his cast?" Total silence. "I took him," I continued, "just as I have taken both children to all their medical appointments, school meetings, and extracurricular activities for 6 months. Because you won't let me, Karen," I said, tired of the conversation. "I let you from day one. The problem is that you chose to go to Phoenix instead of staying to fight for your children. You needed space to think. The children needed their mother. Their needs were more important than your space to think." At that moment, Santiago and Sebastian came running from the backyard, covered in dirt, but happy. "Mommy!" Santiago shouted when he saw Karen. "You came to play with us." "Hello, my love," Karen replied, hugging him, but I noticed her nose wrinkle at the dirt. "You're so dirty." "We're building a sandcastle," Sebastian explained enthusiastically. "Grandma helped us make giant towers." "Grandma plays in the sand?" Karen asked in surprise. "Of course," Santiago replied. "Grandma plays everything with us. Yesterday we played soccer, and on Monday we're going fishing." I watched as Karen's face slowly fell as she realized her children had developed a routine, a complete life, a genuine happiness that didn't include waiting for her. "Do you want to come with me to the mall?" she asked, trying to regain their attention. The children looked at each other. "Can we finish our castle first?" Sebastian asked. "The mall closes late," Santiago added with the logic of a 5-year-old. "But we just started playing," Sebastian concluded. Karen looked at me with an expression that mixed pain, resentment, and something that might have been understanding. "Go with the children," I said softly. "I'll clean up later." When they returned 3 hours later, the children were carrying bags of new toys, but they looked tired and a little overwhelmed. "Did you have fun, Shane?" I asked as Karen unloaded the purchases. "It was fun," Santiago replied diplomatically, "but there were a lot of people and a lot of noise." Sebastian came up to me and whispered in my ear, "Grandma, can we finish our castle tomorrow?" "Of course, my love." Karen stayed for another 20 minutes, watching as the children organized their new toys in their drawers, how they took their baths without anyone telling them to, and how they automatically prepared for dinner time. "They've grown so much," she said to me when the children went to change. "That's what children do when they have stability," I replied, not with sarcasm but with honesty. "Cynthia, can I ask you a question?" "Go ahead. Would you be a better mother to them than I am?" The question took me completely by surprise. "Karen, I'm not trying to be their mother. I'm trying to be the best grandmother I can be while their mother decides what she wants to do with her life. And if I never decide, then I'll keep being the best grandmother I can be." She was silent for a long moment, watching through the window as Victor arrived home from work and was greeted with shouts of excitement by his children. "Victor and you are good now?" she asked. "We are building a new relationship, a more honest one with clear boundaries." "And with me, is there hope for a new relationship?" "Karen, that depends entirely on you. What would I have to do? Stop seeing the children as possessions and start seeing them as people. Stop competing with me for their affection and start earning it with consistency. Stop promising what you can't deliver. And if you can't do it alone, then seek help. Go to therapy, like Victor did." That night, after Karen left and the children were asleep, I sat on my renovated terrace with a cup of tea and my phone. I had a message from Patricia, my lawyer. The criminal charges against Victor have been reduced to community service and financial restitution. The civil charges were settled with the payment of damages. Officially, the case is closed. I deleted the message and looked out at the sea. The waves continued to reach the shore with their eternal rhythm, taking the old and bringing in the new. My phone vibrated again. This time it was a message from Rose. Cynthia, the whole family is talking about how well the kids look. Victor looks better too. Maybe you were right from the beginning. I didn't reply immediately. Instead, I went into the house and checked on my sleeping grandchildren. Santiago had his good arm stretched out on the pillow. The cast had been removed the week before. Sebastian was curled up with a storybook we had read before bed. I returned to the terrace and finally replied to Rose. It wasn't about being right. It was about having boundaries. The next day, as we had pancakes for breakfast, as I had promised 6 months before, Santiago asked me a question that perfectly summed up everything we had been through. Grandma, why do adults take so long to learn to behave well? Because sometimes, my love, adults forget what they learned when they were children. Like what? Like asking for permission before taking things that aren't theirs, like telling the truth even when they're scared, like apologizing when they hurt someone. But you never forget those things, Sebastian observed. I forgot them for many years, I admitted, but you helped me remember. And it was true, my grandchildren had helped me remember that love without boundaries is not love, it's permissiveness. That family is not an excuse for abuse, but a reason to be better. That it is never too late to defend yourself, even when that means defending yourself against the people you love most. The beach house would no longer be empty for a few months. It would be full of children's laughter, honest conversations, healthy boundaries, and second chances, earned, not given. At 61, I had finally learned the most important lesson of all, that protecting your peace doesn't make you selfish, it makes you free. And freedom, I discovered, was the best inheritance I could leave my grandchildren. The names and places in this story have been changed to protect the identities of those involved. We do not share this to judge, but in the hope that someone will pause and reflect on how many mothers are silently suffering within their own homes. I truly wonder, if you were in my place, what would you do? Would you choose silence to preserve peace, or would you dare to confront everything in order to reclaim your voice? I long to hear your thoughts because every story is like a candle that can light the path for someone else. I firmly believe that God always blesses and that courage leads us toward brighter days. As we close, I leave you with two of the channel's most beloved stories. I am certain they will surprise and inspire you. Thank you for staying with me until this moment.